When alien scouts detected 300 human warships where there should have been nothing, they thought their sensors had malfunctioned. Seconds later, when their entire ship went dark, they realized humanity had been hiding something far worse than numbers. The bridge of the Zephyrian scout vessel Whisper of Stars hummed with the quiet efficiency that came from 3 cycles of deep space reconnaissance. Commander Thexler stood before the main display, his 4 eyes scanning the void with practiced ease. The edge of human-controlled space had been marked as a low-priority surveillance zone for the past decade. After all, humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, primitive world-bound creatures who had only recently stumbled into faster-than-light travel. "Commander," Officer Venix called out from the sensor station, her voice carrying an unusual tremor. "I'm detecting multiple signatures at grid coordinates 77 Alpha. Configuration suggests a fleet formation." Thexelar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "A fleet? The humans can barely maintain their colony ships. Probably a merchant convoy that's wandered off course." He moved toward the sensor console with the languid confidence of someone who had spent years documenting the mundane movements of lesser species. But when he saw the display, his blood turned to ice. The screen showed not a handful of vessels, but dozens. No, hundreds. The signatures were unlike anything in the Galactic Council's databases. The energy readings were off the charts, quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible with human technology, drive systems that bent spacetime in ways that violated every known principle of warp mechanics. "Those readings can't be correct," Thexler whispered. "Run a full diagnostic. Check for sensor malfunction." Venix's claws danced across her console. "Diagnostics complete, sir. All systems functioning at optimal parameters. The readings are accurate." She looked up, her eyes wide with growing fear. "Commander, those ships, they're not just fleet vessels. According to the mass readings, some of them are larger than our dreadnoughts, and the weapon signatures." Her voice trailed off. Thexler felt his 3 hearts beating out of sync. The Zephyrian Empire had encountered humans only twice before, both times brief diplomatic exchanges in neutral space. The humans had seemed harmless enough, eager to trade, curious about galactic culture, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic and emotional, but ultimately insignificant. The Council had classified them as a Class 4 civilization, barely worthy of notice. This fleet before them told a different story. "How many ships?" Thexler demanded. "Current count is 317, sir. And, Commander, they're in formation. Military formation. This isn't an exploration fleet or a merchant convoy. This is an armada." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Thexler had served in the Zephyrian military for 30 cycles. He knew what an armada meant. It meant conquest. It meant war. But war against whom? The humans had no enemies in this sector. "Unless, get me a communication channel to command immediately," Thexler ordered. "Priority Alpha. The Council needs to know about this." As Venix worked to establish the quantum link, Thexelar studied the tactical display more carefully. The human fleet was organized into battle groups, each centered around massive capital ships that dwarfed anything he'd ever seen. Surrounding them were smaller vessels moving in perfect synchronization, their formations shifting and flowing like a school of predatory fish. "Sir, I'm picking up energy buildups across multiple vessels," another officer reported. "It looks like they're charging weapon systems." "They can't have detected us," Thexelar said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We're running full stealth. Our signature is no larger than a cosmic dust particle." But even as he spoke, something changed on the display. The entire human fleet, all 317 ships, suddenly shifted orientation. As one, they turned toward the Whisper of Stars. They were looking right at them. "Impossible," Thexelar breathed. "There's no way they could have." The communication console erupted with an incoming signal. Not on any standard Galactic Council frequency, but on an emergency band that bypassed all their security protocols. Venix looked at Thexelar with panic in her eyes. "Sir, they're hailing us. The humans are hailing us. On our own secure channels." Thexler's mandibles spread in disbelief. Those channels were encrypted with quantum keys that would take 1,000,000 years to crack with conventional computing. The humans shouldn't even know those frequencies existed, let alone be able to transmit on them. "Put it through," he said quietly. The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The creature was male, with short dark hair graying at the temples and eyes that held a warmth that seemed at odds with the military uniform he wore. Behind him, Thexlar could see a bridge that was both alien and strangely familiar, filled with holographic displays and crew members moving with disciplined efficiency. "Greetings," the human said in perfect Zephyrian high speech, his pronunciation flawless. "I am Admiral James Chen of the United Earth Stellar Navy, commanding the Third Fleet. You are currently operating the scout vessel Whisper of Stars, Registry Zephyrian Empire, under the command of Commander Thexlar. Your current stealth systems are based on quantum phase manipulation, operating at a frequency of 7.3 petahertz. Very clever, by the way. It would fool most species." Thexlar felt his legs weaken. This human had just listed information that should be impossible for him to know. The stealth frequency was classified at the highest levels. Even most Zephyrian military officers didn't have clearance for those specifications. "How did you?" Thexlar began. Admiral Chen smiled, and there was something predatory in it. "Commander, I'm going to be very direct with you because time is of the essence. My fleet is currently en route to the Krelix border. I'm sure you're aware of the situation there. The Krelix." The name sent a chill through every member of the Whisper of Stars crew. The Krelix swarm was the single greatest threat the Galactic Council had faced in 10,000 years. A hive-mind species of insectoid warriors, they had erupted from the galactic core 3 years ago and had been consuming everything in their path. Dozens of civilizations had fallen. Billions had died. The Council's combined fleets had barely managed to slow their advance. Last Thexlar had heard, the Krelix were pushing toward the outer rim, toward inhabited space. Toward the human colonies. "The Krelix will reach human territory in approximately 14 solar days," Admiral Chen continued. "After analyzing the Council's combat records, we've determined that conventional engagement strategies have a 97.3% failure rate. So we've developed alternative approaches. That's what this fleet represents, Commander. Humanity's answer to the swarm. You're going to fight them?" Thexlar asked incredulously. "Alone?" "Commander Chen." "Admiral," the human corrected gently but firmly. "Admiral Chen, with all respect, the Krelix have destroyed battle fleets 10 times your size. The Council lost 500 dreadnoughts in the Battle of Xerxes Prime. Your 300 ships, however advanced they might be, cannot win?" Chen finished. His smile widened. "Commander Thexlar, you're thinking in conventional terms. You're thinking about this as a war of attrition, of firepower against firepower. That's not how humans fight. Would you like to know what our secret is?" Before Thexlar could respond, something happened that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. The human fleet vanished. Every sensor on the Whisper of Stars screamed in alarm. One moment, 317 massive warships had been clearly visible across multiple detection spectrums. The next moment, space was empty. "Sensor malfunction," Vanek shouted. "I've lost all readings on the human fleet." "Check gravitational distortions," Thexlar ordered, his mind racing. Mass that size doesn't just disappear. Run quantum scans, check for warp signatures, anything. But the sensors showed nothing. Where the human armada had been, there was only empty void. Admiral Chen's face remained on the view screen, his expression calm. "We're still here, Commander. Your sensors simply can't see us anymore. We've cloaked our entire fleet using a technology that operates on principles your Galactic Council hasn't even theorized yet. But that's just the beginning." "Impossible," Thexlar muttered. "No cloaking system can hide that much mass. The gravitational distortion alone." "We're not hiding the mass, Commander. We're redirecting how spacetime itself perceives it. To your sensors, to any sensors based on Council technology, we don't exist. But we're right here." In fact, the view screen split, showing a tactical overlay. Suddenly, red markers appeared around the Whisper of Stars. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The human ships hadn't vanished at all. They had surrounded Thexlar's vessel in perfect formation, so close that a single volley would vaporize the scout ship. "We've been in weapons range for the past 43 seconds, Admiral Chen said conversationally. "We could have destroyed you at any time. We chose not to because humanity doesn't make war on explorers and scientists, but the Krelix are another matter entirely." Thexlar's hands trembled on the console. His crew sat frozen at their stations, staring at sensors that showed nothing but empty space while their view screen proved they were surrounded by an invisible fleet. A message was waiting on his command screen, a message that hadn't been there before. It was a file transfer, massive in size, and attached to it was a note in perfect Zephyrian script. "Commander Thexlar, Enclosed, you will find a complete technical analysis of the Krelix bioships encountered at Xerxes Prime, including tactical recommendations that may save Council lives. We hope you will share this with your military command. Despite what you witnessed today, humanity has not forgotten who we are. We are predators when we must be, but we prefer to be protectors. The coming battle will be brutal. We ask only that the Council trust us to do what is necessary. Admiral Chen Thexler opened the file with trembling claws. What he saw made his 3 hearts stop. The information was incredible detailed schematics of Krelix vessels, psychological profiles of their hive commanders, weaknesses in their swarm tactics, experimental weapon designs specifically calibrated to disrupt their bioorganic hulls. This was intelligence that would have taken the Council decades to compile, presented in a format that was instantly actionable. The humans were sharing their secrets. After demonstrating their overwhelming superiority, after proving they could destroy a Council vessel without even being seen, they were offering an olive branch wrapped in military intelligence. "Phoenix," Thexler said quietly. "Set course for home. Maximum warp. The Council needs to see this immediately." As the whisper of stars turned towards Zephyrian space, Thexlar took one last look at the sector where the human fleet had been. His sensors showed nothing, of course. The humans were long gone, racing toward their confrontation with the Krelix. "Sir," Venix said hesitantly, "what do you think will happen when they meet the swarm?" Thexlar considered the question. He thought about the invisible fleet, about weapons that could shut down a ship without firing a shot, about a species that had spent 3 years preparing for a war that the rest of the galaxy had been losing for just as long. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know one thing with certainty. The galaxy is about to discover what humans are really capable of. And I suspect that whether we win or lose this war, nothing will ever be the same." The whisper of stars engaged its warp drive and vanished into the cosmos, carrying a warning that would shake the Galactic Council to its foundations. Humanity was no longer the naive newcomer asking for guidance. Somewhere in the depths of space, a sleeping giant had awoken, and it was very, very angry. 3 days later, Commander Thexlar stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council, his report displayed on holographic screens for all 500 member species to witness. The Council Chamber, a massive sphere that could hold representatives from every corner of known space, had fallen completely silent. The recording of his encounter with the human fleet played for the 3rd time. Each viewing made the assembled delegates more uncomfortable. "This is unprecedented," hissed Councillor Chirac of the Velnari Concordat, her serpentine body coiling in agitation. "A Class 4 civilization possessing technology that surpasses even our most advanced dreadnoughts? It's impossible. The recording must be fabricated." "The recording has been analyzed by our best technical experts," replied High Arbiter Krelix, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of service to the Council. "It is authentic. Commander Thexler's vessel was systematically disabled by what can only be described as weaponized artificial intelligence. The humans deployed it without even firing a conventional weapon. Then we must act immediately," declared Ambassador Vornash of the Turellian Empire, his multiple arms gesturing emphatically. "If the humans possess such dangerous technology, they represent a clear and present threat to galactic stability. I move that we dispatch a Council armada to human space immediately and demand they submit to a full technological inspection." "Are you mad?" Councillor Miralens of the Savadian Alliance interjected. "You just watched them dismantle a military vessel without detection. You heard their admiral explain that an entire fleet can become invisible to our sensors, and you want to send our ships into a confrontation?" The chamber erupted into chaos, hundreds of species all talking, arguing, demanding action. Thexler watched from his position at the witness platform, his mandibles clicking nervously. He had known his report would cause turmoil, but he hadn't anticipated this level of panic. High Arbiter Krelix raised his staff, and the chamber fell silent. "We will hear from the human ambassador. Bring forward Representative Sarah Okonkwo." The doors to the chamber opened and a human woman walked in with measured, confident steps. She was dressed in formal diplomatic attire, her dark skin contrasting with the white and gold of her ambassador's robes. But what struck Thexler was her expression. She wasn't surprised, wasn't concerned. She had been expecting this summons. "Ambassador Okonkwo," High Arbiter Krelix began, "we have received a troubling report regarding a human military fleet operating near Zephyrian space. The fleet in question demonstrated capabilities far beyond what your government has declared in your council submissions. We demand an explanation. Ambassador Okonkwo looked directly at the High Arbiter, her expression calm. With respect, High Arbiter, humanity has violated no council regulations. We have disclosed all civilian technologies as required by the membership charter. Our military capabilities have never been subject to council oversight. You deliberately deceived us. Councillor Schrock hissed. You played the role of naive newcomers while secretly building an armada that could threaten every species in the galaxy. We built an armada that could defend humanity, Okonkwo corrected sharply. When we joined the council 30 years ago, we asked for protection against potential threats. We were told that the council maintained peace through collective security. Then the Krelix arrived and we watched as that collective security failed. World after world fell. Billions died. And humanity realized that we couldn't rely on anyone but ourselves. She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying to every corner. We didn't deceive you. We adapted. We survived. We did what any intelligent species would do when faced with an existential threat. We prepared. And now in 11 days the Krelix will reach human territory. When they do, they will find us ready. Ready to do what? Demanded Ambassador Vornash. The Krelix have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than your forces. What makes you think 300 ships can succeed where thousands have failed? Ambassador Okonkwo smiled, and Thexlar recognized that same predatory expression he had seen on Admiral Chen's face. Because we're not going to fight them the way you did. We're not going to meet them in honorable battle. We're not going to follow the conventions of warfare that the Council holds so dear. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to cheat, lie, manipulate, and use every dirty trick we've learned in 200,000 years of evolution. The chamber exploded in outrage. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding sanctions, military intervention, immediate expulsion of humanity from the Council. Silence. High Arbiter Krelix's voice boomed through the chamber with an authority that could not be ignored. When quiet returned, he fixed Ambassador Okonkwo with a hard stare. Are you declaring that humanity intends to violate the conventions of warfare? To use forbidden weapons and tactics? I'm declaring that humanity will do whatever is necessary to survive, Okonkwo replied steadily. The conventions were written by species who had the luxury of winning their wars through conventional means. The Krelix don't follow conventions. They consume. They destroy. They leave nothing behind. So we will match them, terror for terror, horror for horror, until they learn that humanity is not prey. She pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing star charts of the sector where the Krelix were advancing. Why are you showing me this? Thexlar asked. Because the Galactic Council needs to understand what's about to happen, Chen replied, his tone growing serious. In 14 days, the Krelix swarm will encounter something they've never faced before. They've conquered 20 civilizations because those civilizations fought the way the Council taught them to fight. By the book. By honor codes and rules of engagement written by species who think in straight lines. The Admiral leaned forward, his eyes intense. Humans don't think in straight lines, Commander. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We fought each other for 200,000 years before we reached the stars. We learned to be creative, to be ruthless when necessary, to adapt and overcome. The Krelix are about to learn what predators really look like. On the tactical display, the invisible human ships began moving, flowing through space in patterns that seemed almost organic. Thexlar watched in fascination as the formation shifted, creating what looked like a trap. A massive three-dimensional net made of starships. Your stealth capabilities are impressive, Admiral, Thexlar said, trying to keep his voice steady. But the Krelix have bioorganic sensors. They don't rely on technology alone. And their numbers are irrelevant, Chen interrupted. You're still not understanding, Commander. We didn't come here to match them ship for ship. We came here to break them. He pressed something off screen and another image appeared on the view screen. It showed a human vessel unlike any of the others, smaller, sleeker, covered in what looked like organic material that pulsed with sickly green light. That, Chen said quietly, is the Prometheus. She's the first ship we built using captured Krelix biotechnology. We took their own weapons, their own biology, and we reverse-engineered it. Improved it. Weaponized it in ways they never imagined. Thexlar felt his blood run cold. You experimented with Krelix specimens? That's forbidden by 17 different council laws. The contamination risk alone. The council's laws are written by species who've never faced extinction, Chen said flatly. 3 years ago, a Krelix scout ship entered the Sol system. They attacked our mining colony on Europa. 3,000 men, women, and children died in the first 20 minutes. We killed that scout ship, but we learned something important. The Council's rules don't apply when you're fighting for survival. The Admiral's expression hardened. We studied the wreckage. We dissected every Krelix corpse we could recover. We mapped their neural patterns, decoded their hive signals, analyzed their bioships at the molecular level. And then we did what humans do best, we turned their own weapons against them. Sir, Venny shouted suddenly, something's wrong with our systems. The navigation computer is showing errors. Communications are, Commander. We're losing containment on the quantum core. Thexler spun toward the engineering console. Warning lights flashed red across every display. Critical systems were failing one after another as if the ship itself was coming apart. Phoenix, report. What's happening? I don't know, sir. It's like the ship's computer is rewriting itself. The code is changing, mutating. This doesn't make any sense. On the view screen, Admiral Chen's expression remained neutral. Don't be alarmed, Commander. Your ship isn't under attack. We're simply demonstrating another aspect of human warfare. Your systems are being infiltrated by what we call a polymorphic cyber weapon. It was deployed 7 minutes ago when you first detected our fleet. Thexelar's eyes widened in horror. You infected us? But our firewalls, our quantum encryption, were designed to stop conventional cyber attacks, Chen said calmly. This isn't conventional. This is adaptive artificial intelligence combined with quantum computing, and something we borrowed from Earth's biological warfare playbook. Think of it as a digital virus that evolves faster than your defenses can adapt. Every time your systems try to purge it, it learns and becomes stronger. The lights on the bridge flickered. Consoles sparked. Thexlar watched helplessly as his state-of-the-art reconnaissance vessel, equipped with technology refined over thousands of years of Zephyrian engineering, was systematically dismantled by an invisible enemy. Why? Thexlar demanded, his voice breaking. Why are you doing this to us? We're not your enemy. No, you're not, Admiral Chen agreed. That's why your ship will survive this. In approximately 90 seconds, your systems will completely shut down. Life support will continue on emergency backups, but everything else will be offline. Your crew will be unharmed. In 6 hours after my fleet has moved beyond scanning range, your systems will automatically restore themselves. You'll be able to return home and report what you've witnessed here. But why show us this at all? Thexler asked, gripping his console as another power surge shook the ship. Admiral Chen's expression grew grave. Because the Galactic Council needs to make a choice, Commander. In 2 weeks, the Krelix will enter human space. They will find us waiting. What happens next will either save the galaxy or damn it. We need the Council to understand that humanity is not asking for permission. We are not requesting aid. We are informing you that we are taking action, and that action will be extreme. The Council will never approve, Thexler began. We're not asking for approval. Chen cut him off. What you've seen today is a fraction of what we've prepared. Stealth technology, cyber warfare, biological weapons, these are just the beginning. We've spent 3 years preparing for this war, Commander. We've poured every resource, every innovation, every ounce of human creativity into building weapons that will not just defeat the Krelix, but terrify them. The main lights went out. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in a crimson glow. Thexlar could feel his ship dying around him, systems collapsing in a cascade failure that seemed almost elegant in its precision. You see, Commander, Chen continued, his voice now the only stable thing in Thexlar's collapsing world. The galaxy thinks of humans as young, naive, idealistic. We let them think that. It served our purposes. But humanity learned a long time ago that in a universe of predators, the only way to survive is to become the apex predator. Thexlar slumped in his command chair, watching as the last of his systems went dark. What have you become? He whispered. On the view screen, Admiral Chen's face showed something that might have been regret. We've become what we needed to be, what we've always been, really. You see, Commander, every species in the Galactic Council evolved on worlds where cooperation was rewarded, where peace was possible. Earth wasn't like that. On Earth, everything was war. The weather, the predators, the diseases, even each other. We are the descendants of survivors, Commander. Every human alive today comes from an unbroken line of people who refuse to die. The view screen flickered, Chen's image beginning to break apart as the last power reserves failed. "Tell the council what you saw here today," Chen said as the transmission degraded.
"Tell them that humanity thanks them for their efforts against the Krelix, but we'll take it from here."
"Tell them to stay out of our way. And tell them." His image paused, and for a moment Thexler saw something ancient and terrible in the human's eyes. "Tell them that when this is over, they may want to reconsider humanity's classification. We're not a Class 4 civilization, Commander. We never were." The screen went black. The last systems died. The whisper of stars went silent, drifting in the void. In the darkness, Thexler sat alone with his thoughts, understanding that he had just witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. Somewhere out there, invisible and unstoppable, 317 human warships were racing toward a confrontation that would either save civilization or unleash something worse than the Krelix themselves. 6 hours passed in silence. The crew of the Whisper of Stars sat in the dark, relying on emergency life support, unable to communicate or move. Thexler spent that time reviewing everything he knew about humans, everything the Council had documented about this strange species that had burst onto the galactic stage just 30 years ago. The humans had arrived with gifts, with art and music, with literature that spoke of hope and unity. They had seemed so eager to join the galactic community, so in awe of the ancient civilizations they encountered. The Council had welcomed them as it welcomed all newcomers, with benevolent condescension. No one had thought to ask why a species barely 3 decades into interstellar travel had technology that worked so seamlessly with Council systems. No one had questioned how they had developed faster-than-light travel independently, in a way that was different from but compatible with the standard warp drives used by every other species. No one had wondered what kind of civilization could unite an entire planet, end all their wars and reach for the stars in just a few generations. Looking back now, Thexler realized the signs had been there all along. The humans had been studying the galaxy, learning everything they could about every species, every technology, every weakness. They had been preparing for the one thing that eventually threatened all spacefaring civilizations, an enemy that wanted to consume them. When life support kicked back online, the hum of returning power was almost startling. System by system, the Whisper of Stars came back to life. But as the consoles lit up, Thexler noticed something strange. "In 11 days, the Krelix Vanguard will encounter the 3rd Fleet at the Sigma Draconis system," she continued. "What happens there will determine not just humanity's fate, but potentially the fate of this entire galactic arm. Admiral Chen has requested that Council observers be allowed to witness the engagement. He wants you to see exactly what humanity is capable of. After that, the Council can make an informed decision about how to proceed." "This is unacceptable," Councillor Chirac hissed. "We cannot condone." "You don't have to condone anything," Okonkwo interrupted. "You don't have to approve. You don't even have to acknowledge what we're about to do, but you will witness it. Because after we stop the Krelix advance, and we will stop it, the galaxy needs to understand that humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist. We're informing you that we intend to survive, regardless of what protocols we have to break to do so." High Arbiter Krelix was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "The Council will dispatch observer vessels to Sigma Draconis. We will witness this engagement. But be warned, Ambassador Okonkwo, if humanity's actions threaten galactic stability, if you become the very monsters you claim to be fighting, the full might of the Council will turn against you." Ambassador Okonkwo nodded solemnly. "Understood, High Arbiter. But consider this. If we fail, if the Krelix destroy the 3rd Fleet, they will have a clear path to Earth. And then they'll keep coming. They'll consume human space, then Zephyrian space, then Velnari space, on and on until nothing is left. We're not just fighting for humanity. Whether you realize it or not, we're fighting for all of you." She turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a council in chaos and a galaxy on the brink of discovering just how dangerous humanity could truly be. The next 11 days were the longest of Commander Thexlar's life. The Council had assigned him to the Observer mission, perhaps as punishment for being the bearer of bad news, or perhaps because his encounter with Admiral Chen meant he had unique insight into human tactics. Now he stood on the bridge of the Council observation ship Eternal Witness, a vessel specifically designed for monitoring large-scale engagements. Around him stood representatives from a dozen major council species, all watching the same holographic display with growing anxiety. The Sigma Draconis system hung before them in perfect detail. It was an unremarkable system: 3 gas giants, a belt of asteroids, and 1 terrestrial planet that humans had been in the process of terraforming. According to the charts, a colony of 50,000 humans lived in biodomes on the surface, and somewhere in this system, invisible to all their sensors, waited the 3rd Fleet. The Krelix Vanguard will arrive in approximately 1 hour, announced the Eternal Witness's captain, a methodical Kelntar named Zixvol. Intelligence suggests approximately 4,000 bioships, including 3 hive queens. Thexelar felt his heart sink. 4,000 ships against 300? Even with all the human technology he'd witnessed, the math was impossible. "Have we detected any sign of the human fleet?" asked Observer Nelvix of the Altarian Compact. "Negative," Captain Zixvol replied. "Our sensors show nothing but the human colony and standard system traffic. Either they've evacuated or they're here and we can't see them," Thexelar finished quietly. As if in response to his words, a communication channel opened. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Council observers, this is Admiral Chen. Thank you for accepting our invitation. What you're about to witness will be disturbing. I want to apologize in advance for what you're going to see. But I also want you to understand that every tactic we employed today was developed specifically to neutralize the Krelix threat with minimal loss of human life. That is..." "Admiral Chen," Observer Nelvik said carefully, "our scans show no sign of your fleet. Where are you positioned?" Chen smiled that predatory smile. "We're everywhere, Observer. And nowhere. You'll understand soon enough. The Krelix will be here in 47 minutes. I suggest you position your ship outside the engagement zone. Things are going to get messy." "Admiral, your forces are outnumbered more than 10 to 1, Thexelar interjected. "Even with your advanced technology, how can you possibly..." "Commander Thexelar," Chen interrupted, and there was something like warmth in his voice. "Thank you for delivering our message to the Council, and thank you for the report you filed. You were honest about what you saw, even though you knew it would cause problems. That takes courage." He leaned forward. "Let me share something with you. In humanity's ancient history, there was a battle called Thermopylae. 300 warriors held off an army of hundreds of thousands. They lost, but they bought time for their civilization to prepare. They became legends." Chen's expression hardened. "Today, 300 ships are going to face 4,000. But unlike Thermopylae, we're not planning to lose. We're planning to break them so completely that the Krelix will fear human space for generations. Watch carefully, Commander. And remember, you asked what we've become. Today you'll see the answer." The transmission ended. 47 minutes later, the Krelix arrived. They came like a plague of locusts, tearing through the fabric of space itself. One moment the system was empty. The next, thousands of bioorganic ships materialized in formations that seemed to defy physics. The Krelix vessels were nightmarish things, all chitin and biological weaponry, more grown than built. On the observation deck, alarms screamed as sensors struggled to catalog the massive fleet. Thexelar watched the display with mounting horror. The Krelix weren't just numerous, they were organized with a precision that spoke of a single controlling intelligence. Reading 4,217 vessels, Captain Zixvol reported, his voice professionally calm despite the situation. 3 hive queens confirmed, coordinates marked. They're advancing toward the human colony in standard swarm formation. The Krelix moved like a living thing, their ships flowing through space in perfect synchronization. The 3 hive queens, massive vessels the size of small moons, hung at the rear of the formation, protected by layers upon layers of warrior-class bioships. Still no sign of the human fleet, Observer Nelvik said, his appendages twitching with nervous energy. "Surely they're not planning to let the Krelix reach the colony." As if answering his question, something changed. The Krelix formation suddenly rippled like a school of fish sensing a predator. Their advance slowed, then stopped entirely. "What's happening?" Captain Zixvol demanded. "Why did they halt?" Thexelar studied the tactical display, his eyes scanning for any anomaly. Then he saw its subtle distortions in the sensor readings, ghost signatures that appeared and disappeared too quickly to track. "They know," Thexelar whispered. "The Krelix know the humans are here, As if to confirm his words, the Krelix fleet suddenly erupted with activity. Bioships began firing in seemingly random directions, their organic weapons spewing acidic plasma and bio-missiles into empty space. To the observers, it looked like madness. But Thexler understood the hive mind was panicking. Then Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications channel, calm and cold. Phase 1, Psychological Warfare. Execute. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries. Every single Krelix ship simultaneously received a transmission, not on their communication frequencies that would have been too simple. This transmission came through their own bioneural networks, the organic connections that linked every ship to the hive queens. The humans had hacked into the Krelix hive mind itself. The transmission was simple. Images of Krelix ships being torn apart, recordings of hive queens dying, footage of Krelix warriors being dissected in human laboratories. But it wasn't just what the images showed, it was how they were presented. The humans had somehow encoded fear into the transmission, primal terror that bypassed conscious thought and struck directly at the most basic survival instincts. For the first time in recorded history, the Krelix swarm broke formation. Impossible, breathed observer Nelvix. The Krelix don't feel fear. They're a hive mind. Individual survival instinct has been bred out of them. They didn't feel fear, Texlar corrected, watching as the mighty swarm began to scatter like frightened prey. Until now, the Krelix ships fired wildly, destroying each other in their panic. The hive queens broadcast override commands, trying to reassert control. But the psychological weapon the humans had unleashed was too powerful. It exploited some fundamental flaw in the hive mind architecture, turning the Krelix's greatest strength, their perfect unity, into a weakness. Phase 2. Divide and conquer. Execute. Now the human ships revealed themselves, but not all at once. They materialized in small groups, 3 or 4 at a time, appearing behind isolated clusters of Krelix vessels. The human ships opened fire with weapons that seemed designed specifically to cause maximum psychological impact. One human destroyer launched missiles that didn't explode on impact. Instead, they burrowed into the Krelix bioships and released some kind of agent that caused the ships to tear themselves apart from the inside, their own biological systems turning against them. The screams that came over the communication channels were horrifying. The Krelix could feel their ships dying. Another human cruiser deployed what looked like mines. But when Krelix ships approached, the mines didn't explode. They released swarms of nanomachines that began deconstructing the bioships at the molecular level, turning them into clouds of organic matter that contaminated nearby vessels. "This is obscene," observer Nelvik said, his voice shaking. "This violates every convention of civilized warfare." "This is survival," Captain Zixval countered, though he looked equally disturbed. "And it's working." In less than 20 minutes, the Krelix vanguard had lost over 1,000 ships without the human fleet suffering a single casualty. The swarm was in complete chaos, ships fleeing in all directions, hive queens desperately trying to restore order. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned. Phase 3. Decapitation Strike. Execute. 3 human capital ships materialized simultaneously, each one appearing directly beside one of the hive queens. Dexlar recognized the configuration from his encounter. Days ago, these were the massive vessels that had formed the center of the Third Fleet's formation, but now he could see them in action. The first capital ship, designated Nemesis, deployed what appeared to be boarding pods, thousands of them, launched at point-blank range directly into the hive queen's bioorganic hull. But these weren't carrying soldiers, they were carrying something far worse. "Are those biological agents?" Observer Nelvix asked in horror. "Modified Krelix bioweapons," Thexlar said, reading the spectral analysis. "They've weaponized the Krelix's own biology against them." The hive queen began to convulse as the boarding pods released their payload. The massive vessel's hull rippled and bulged as the modified bioweapons rewrote its cellular structure. Within minutes, the hive queen was no longer a ship. It was a tumor, a cancerous growth that spread to every Krelix vessel still connected to its neural network. The second capital ship, Retribution, used a different approach. It fired a single massive projectile that punched through the hive queen's shields and buried itself deep in the vessel's core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Hive Queen's entire bio-neural network lit up with activity. "They've uploaded something into the Hive Queen's consciousness," Captain Zixaval said, reading the sensor data with disbelief. It's a virus. A mimetic virus. "They're attacking its mind," the Hive Queen began, broadcasting contradictory orders to its swarm. Attack, retreat, surrender, self-destruct. The conflicting commands drove hundreds of Kree-like ships into complete dysfunction, some shutting down entirely, others turning on their own fleet. The third capital ship, Reckoning, demonstrated perhaps the most terrifying weapon of all. It simply began pulling the Hive Queen apart, using what appeared to be controlled gravitational fields. The massive bioship stretched and tore, its screams transmitted across every frequency as it was systematically dismantled. But the humans weren't killing it quickly. They were making it suffer. They were making sure every Kree-like ship in the system could feel their queen dying slowly, agonizingly. "Stop this," Observer Nelvik shouted at the communication console. "Admiral Chen, this is barbaric." "The Hive Queen is defeated. There's no need to. There's every need." Admiral Chen's voice cut through. "The Kree-liks need to understand what happens when they threaten humanity. They need to fear us more than they desire to consume us. This isn't cruelty, Observer. This is a message." The three Hive Queens died within minutes of each other, and with their deaths the entire Kree-lik's vanguard collapsed. Ships began fleeing in all directions, abandoning any pretense of coordination. Some tried to enter warp, only to find their biodrives had been infected by human nanoweapons. They tore themselves apart trying to escape. Phase 4. Total annihilation. Execute. The entire human fleet appeared at once, all 317 ships dropping their stealth simultaneously. They formed a perfect spherical formation around the remaining Kree-lik's vessels, creating an inescapable cage of firepower, and then they opened fire. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Human weapons systems, calibrated specifically to exploit Kree-lik's biology, tore through the swarm with horrifying efficiency. Ships that had survived dozens of battles against Council forces were destroyed in seconds. The humans didn't just destroy the Kree-lik's vessels, they vaporized them, ensuring no biological matter survived that could regenerate or be recovered. In 37 minutes, 4,217 Kree-lik ships were reduced to dust. The silence that followed was deafening. The observation deck of the Eternal Witness was completely silent. Every delegate stared at the displays in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The greatest threat the galaxy had faced in millennia had been annihilated by a species the Council had classified as primitive just 30 years ago. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the view screen once more. He looked tired, older somehow, as if what he'd just ordered had cost him something vital. "Council observers," he began, his voice heavy. "What you witnessed today was the result of 3 years of preparation, billions of credits in research and development, and the complete dedication of humanity's military-industrial complex to a single goal, the elimination of the Kree-lik's threat. You committed war crimes," Observer Nelvik said, his voice shaking with rage and horror. "You used biological weapons, psychological torture. You made them suffer." "Yes," Chen interrupted simply. "We did all of that. And we'd do it again. Because it worked. The Kree-lik's vanguard is destroyed, and more importantly, the hive mind that controls the entire swarm felt every moment of this battle. They felt their queens die. They felt their warriors panic. For the first time in their existence, the Kree-liks have learned what it means to be prey." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Here's what's going to happen now. We've deployed quantum beacons throughout this system that will broadcast the recordings of this battle directly into Kree-lik space. Every hive cluster, every queen, every warrior will see what happened here. They will learn that human space is forbidden territory. They will learn that entering our territory means death, not just death, but the kind of death that even a hive mind fears." "You've declared war on an entire species," Captain Zixval said quietly. "No," Chen corrected. "We've declared that we will not go quietly into extinction. There's a difference. The Kree-liks can choose to avoid human space. They can choose to attack other targets. We're not hunting them, we're simply making it clear that if they come for us, we will make them regret it." Thexler finally found his voice. "Admiral Chen, the Council cannot condone what you've done here today. The use of biological weapons alone. I'm not asking for the Council's condemnation or approval," Chen said firmly. "I'm informing you of reality. Humanity has demonstrated that we possess the capability to stop the Krelix. More than that, we've demonstrated that we're willing to use methods the Council won't. He paused, letting that sink in. Now the Council has a choice to make. You can condemn us, sanction us, even try to force us into compliance with your conventions. Or you can recognize that humanity has just done what your combined fleets couldn't do in 3 years. We've stopped a Krelix advance cold. What are you proposing? Observer Nelvix asked warily. I'm proposing a partnership, Chen replied. We'll share our anti-Krelix technology with the Council. The biological weapons, the cyber warfare capabilities, the psychological warfare tactics, all of it, will help you fight the Krelix more effectively. But in exchange, the Council stops treating humanity as a junior member and recognizes us as a full military power. You're blackmailing the entire Galactic Council, Observer Nelvik said. Chen smiled without humor. I'm offering the Council a way to survive. The Krelix aren't going away. They're still out there, still consuming worlds. What happened today proved that they can be stopped, but only if you're willing to fight the way they fight, without mercy, without hesitation, and with every weapon at your disposal. The cost to our civilization's soul would be too high, Captain Zixful argued. To become what you've become. To become survivors? Chen interrupted. Yes, we've paid a price. We've had to acknowledge the darker aspects of human nature. We've had to weaponize our own capacity for cruelty and turn it against an enemy that threatened our existence. But we're still here. Our children will still grow up. Our civilization will continue. He stood, his figure dominating the view screen. The Council can judge us all you want. You can debate the morality of our actions in your grand assemblies. But while you're debating, we'll be here on the front lines using every dirty trick we know to keep the Krelix from consuming this galaxy. The question is, will you help us or will you stand aside and watch? The transmission ended, leaving the observers alone with their thoughts and the lingering horror of what they'd witnessed. The Council's choice. 2 weeks later, Commander Thexler stood once again before the Grand Assembly. But this time the chamber was different. There was no chaos, no shouting. Instead, there was a grim silence as the delegates processed the recordings from Sigma Draconis. High Arbiter Krellick spoke, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of decision. The Council has reviewed all evidence from the engagement at Sigma Draconis. We have consulted with our ethical committees, our military strategists, and our historians. We have debated for 2 weeks about the appropriate response to humanity's actions. He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from 500 worlds. The consensus is divided. Many species demand that humanity be sanctioned for violation of the conventions of warfare. Others argue that the conventions were not designed for an enemy like the Krelix. Still others suggest that humanity has demonstrated capabilities that could be crucial to our collective survival. Thexelar watched as Ambassador Okonkwo stood in the center of the chamber, her expression unreadable. She had not spoken since the battle, merely allowing the recordings to speak for themselves. Therefore, High Arbiter Krellix continued, the Council has reached a compromise decision. Humanity will not be sanctioned for their actions at Sigma Draconis. However, we cannot officially endorse the methods used. Instead, we are creating a new classification. Humanity will be designated as a Category Alpha Threat Response Force. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The designation was unprecedented. It acknowledged humanity as both a threat and an asset. What does this mean in practice? Ambassador Okonkwo asked. It means, High Arbiter Krellix explained, that humanity will be given operational autonomy in combating the Krelix threat. You will not be required to follow the conventions of warfare when facing them. You will not be sanctioned for using weapons and tactics that would otherwise be forbidden. In exchange, you will share your technology and tactics with Council forces, and you will accept Council oversight of your military operations outside of Krelix engagements. We retain sovereignty over human space, Okonkwo stated firmly, and we maintain the right to defend ourselves by any means necessary. Agreed, Krellick said. But understand this, Ambassador Okonkwo. The galaxy will be watching humanity very carefully. Today you are a weapon pointed at the Krelix. If that weapon ever turns toward Council species, if humanity's methods are ever used against civilized worlds, the full might of 500 species will unite against you. Okonkwo nodded slowly. Understood, High Arbiter. Humanity has no desire for conquest. We simply want to be left alone to live in peace. But we will defend that peace with everything we have. Then we have an accord, Krellix declared. Let it be recorded that on this day, humanity has been recognized as a full military power within the Galactic Council. May we never have cause to regret this decision. As the session ended and delegates filed out, Thexlar approached Ambassador Okonkwo. She turned to face him and he was surprised to see something like sadness in her eyes. "You're not celebrating," Thexlar observed. "No," Okonkwo admitted quietly, "because I understand what we've lost. We came to the stars hoping to be better than we were on Earth. We wanted to transcend our violent history, to prove that humanity could evolve beyond warfare and cruelty." She looked at the recording still playing on the chamber screens, showing human weapons tearing through Krelix ships. "Instead, we've proven that when pushed to the edge, we'll go further into darkness than anyone else will. We'll use weapons that make civilized species recoil in horror. We'll employ tactics that violate every ethical principle." She met Thexlar's eyes. "We've saved lives today, maybe billions of lives, but we've also shown the galaxy what humans really are when we're afraid." "And what is that?" Thexlar asked softly. "The monsters that scare the monsters," Okonkwo replied. "And I'm not sure if the galaxy will ever forgive us for it." 6 months later, the war against the Krelix continued, but the dynamics had fundamentally changed. After Sigma Draconis, 3 more Krelix hive fleets attempted to enter human space. All 3 were annihilated using variations of the tactics demonstrated in that first battle. More importantly, the psychological warfare had worked. The Krelix, for the first time in their recorded history, began avoiding certain sectors of space. Human territory became a dead zone in their expansion, a place even the mindless swarm instinctively feared. The Council, meanwhile, slowly began adopting human anti-Krelix technologies. Not all of them, many were deemed too horrific for civilized use. But the tactical databases, the targeting algorithms, the cyber warfare protocols, these were shared and deployed across Council fleets. Casualty rates against the Krelix dropped by 60% in 6 months. Commander Thexlar, promoted to High Commander after his role in the Sigma Draconis observation mission, now oversaw joint human-Zephyrian operations against the Krelix. He had learned to work alongside human officers, had learned to think like them, to see warfare not as a noble contest, but as a problem to be solved by any means necessary. It disturbed him how easily that mindset came. On his personal console, he kept the message Admiral Chen had sent him after the battle. He read it sometimes late at night when the weight of command felt too heavy. "Commander Thexlar, you asked me what humanity has become. Here's the truth. We've become what we needed to be, nothing more and nothing less. We hope that someday, when the Krelix are defeated and peace returns to the galaxy, we can go back to being the naive, idealistic species that first reached for the stars. But until that day comes, we'll be the darkness that fights the darkness. We'll be the monsters that keep everyone else safe. It's not the role we wanted, but it's the role the universe gave us. Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for being honest about what you saw, and thank you for understanding, even if you can't approve. Admiral James Chen, UESN 3rd Fleet." Thexlar closed the message and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human fleets patrolled the borders, using weapons that would give him nightmares. But behind those fleets, billions of beings, human and alien alike, slept safely. Perhaps, he thought, that was the price of survival in a hostile universe. Perhaps every civilization eventually had to choose between their ideals and their continued existence. The humans had made their choice. And whether the galaxy liked it or not, that choice had saved them all. As Thexlar returned to his duties, coordinating the next joint operation against a Krelix hive cluster, he wondered what historians would say about this era. Would they remember humanity as saviors who stopped an existential threat, or as the species that showed the galaxy how far civilization could fall when pushed to the edge? Maybe, he decided, they would be remembered as both. And maybe that was the most human thing of all, to be simultaneously the hero and the monster, the savior and the nightmare, the hope and the horror, because that's what humanity had taught the galaxy. That survival sometimes required embracing the darkness within, that civilization's light could only be preserved by those willing to stand in the shadows, and that the most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't a ship or a bomb, it was the determination of a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. The Krelix had learned that lesson at Sigma Draconis. The galaxy would never forget it.